All right, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that, well, it feels increasingly central to our national dialogue: transgender children and youth.
It really does.
It's a subject that weaves together really profound personal identity, evolving medical science, intricate legal frameworks, and also some deeply held societal beliefs.
Yeah, it's remarkable how many layers there are to this discussion, isn't it? You've got
Oh,
the intimate personal narratives of individuals and families,
right.
then the complex medical guidelines, and even these significant political and legal actions playing out across the country.
So, our mission in this deep dive is really to explore these various viewpoints and experiences, drawing from the sources you've shared with us.
Yeah.
We've gathered, well, quite a range, everything from breaking news reports on legislative action, statements from political figures,
Uh-huh.
to detailed clinical research on gender dysphoria, some deeply personal accounts from parents and trans youth themselves, and even insights from, online communities.
Real mix.
Exactly. We aim to help you navigate this complex landscape, bring some clarity, hopefully, to the different facets of this vital conversation, giving you those high-level insights without getting too bogged down.
That's good.
Okay, so to ground our discussion, let's start with the basics. How do our sources frame gender identity and gender dysphoria, especially when we're talking about children and youth?
Well, our sources pretty consistently highlight gender as this internal sense, distinct from the sex a person is assigned at birth, which is based purely on external anatomy.
Right, the biological assignment.
Precisely.
Mm.
Gender identity is that internal knowing, feeling male, female, maybe both or neither. And then gender expression is how someone outwardly presents that identity.
That distinction feels really foundational here.
It absolutely is crucial for understanding the rest of the conversation.
And then there's the term gender dysphoria. What exactly is that, according to these sources?
Right. So gender dysphoria, it's a diagnostic term. It's not for being transgender itself that's really important. Being trans isn't seen as a mental illness. It's for the significant distress or impairment an individual experiences because of that disconnect between their assigned birth gender and their internal sense of self.
So it's about the distress caused by the mismatch.
Exactly. And it's often a gateway for individuals to access gender-affirming care and potentially get insurance coverage for it, too.
You shared some incredibly powerful personal stories with us that really illustrate just how innate this internal knowing can feel, even from a
Right.
very young age.
Yes, some really striking accounts.
We heard about Josie, an 8-year-old assigned male at birth. Her behavior became erratic, apparently, hysterical tantrums if she couldn't express her femininity. And at just 6, it's tough, she was found in the bathroom trying to use nail clippers on her penis. She saw it as a birth defect, hoping, to fix it, to get boobs.
It's quite profound, that level of distress and conviction at such a young age.
Absolutely. And then there's Kyler, also 8, assigned male at birth, who apparently asked, "Why was I born a boy?" from very early on. These accounts really suggest an internal knowledge that starts long before puberty hits.
Yeah, they really do. And it raises that critical question, doesn't it? How early can a child truly know their gender identity?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we tell that apart from, say, typical gender nonconforming behavior?
That's the tricky part.
Well, the Human Rights Campaign, one of the sources, outlines a sort of general rule. They say if a child is consistent, insistent, and persistent about their transgender identity.
Persistent, insistent, persistent.
Right, over months or years. That's generally seen as a strong indicator, stronger than just, playing with toys typically associated with another gender. For instance, if a child assigned male at birth repeatedly insists, "I am a girl," that's a significant sign.
We also heard from the parent of Isabel, who later became Shane. They shared this real aha moment.
Oh, yes, that was fascinating.
It started when their 4-year-old announced, out of the blue, "I believe in reincarnation, and when I come back, I'm going to be a boy, and my name will be Shane."
Wow, at 4.
Yeah. And it progressed from there, insisting on shopping in the boys' section, refusing pink clothes, later discomfort with girls' bathrooms. The parent eventually realized, as they put it, he was not growing out of being a boy, he was growing into it.
That's powerful phrasing.
Especially when a psychologist used male pronouns and noted he said he didn't think his parents were ready yet. It really speaks to that deep, personal knowing.
It really does.
Okay, moving on slightly. One of the most critical and, let's be honest, intensely debated aspects here is whether children with gender dysphoria grow out of it, this idea of desistance. What do the sources say?
Well, this is where you see some really stark contrasts in the data presented. A key takeaway is this divergence.
Okay.
So, according to one source, Transgender Trend,
Mm.
they cite 11 studies, suggesting that, on average, a pretty significant majority, maybe around 80% of children with gender dysphoria, don't continue into adulthood as transgender.
80%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This includes older studies and a 2013 Dutch study where I think it was 64% of kids referred to a gender clinic either desisted or were no longer traceable by adolescents.
And they assumed untraceable meant desisted.
That was the assumption in that particular analysis, yes. So it suggests that for many, the dysphoria might resolve naturally over time.
That 80% figure, it certainly fuels the argument for a more cautious approach, maybe watchful waiting initially.
It's definitely used that way, yes.
Yep.
Emphasizing the potential for natural desistance before any medical steps are taken.
But then, our sources bring in another piece of info from the UK's Tavistock Clinic. And it paints a very different picture.
Exactly. And this is where the debate gets really complex. The Tavistock Clinic's evidence, as presented, shows that 40% of children referred to them do actually progress onto puberty blockers.
Okay, 40% start blockers.
And here's the really critical part. Almost all children who start puberty blockers then go on to cross-sex hormones, which suggests that desistance, once medical intervention like blockers begins, is actually very rare.
So, it raises the question, could the blockers themselves, by pausing natural puberty, actually increase the persistence of gender dysphoria?
That's precisely the question raised by that data. It's a major point of contention. So on one side, you have data suggesting a high rate of natural desistance, and on the other, data showing near universal persistence once medical steps like blockers are taken. It's a central dilemma for everyone involved, families, clinicians.
How do you balance affirmation with this evolving medical picture and the child's long-term well-being? It's incredibly tough.
It really is. The Transgender Trend source concludes that, quote, therapeutic approaches for children with gender dysphoria are not evidence-based and long-term outcome studies are urgently needed.
Okay, call for more research there.
But then you have the Human Rights Campaign taking a completely different stance. They state clearly that being transgender or non-binary is not a phase. And they argue that attempts to change a child's gender identity, like through conversion therapy, are not just ineffective but dangerous and can cause permanent damage to mental health.
Citing major medical groups.
Yes, they point to condemnation from the American Psychological Association, the American Medical Association. So you see this deep division in perspective on the best path forward.
Okay, so having explored these early signs and the complex desistance debate, it's clear the conversation shifts towards medical intervention. Let's unpack that now. Puberty blockers, hormones. What do the sources tell us about how they're used? We heard about Bailey, 12 years old, assigned female at birth but living as a boy, taking blockers for 2 years. What's the main goal there?
So puberty blockers, as the sources explain, they essentially medically pause the onset of natural puberty.
Put things on hold.
Exactly. It buys time. Crucial time for the individual and their family to make really informed decisions before those irreversible secondary sex characteristics develop, like deepening voice, breast development, things like that.
So it extends childhood physically, in a way.
That's one way it's described, yes.
Right.
Extending the physicality of pre-puberty. We see examples like Chris starting blockers at 12, then testosterone at 14, and Kim Petras, who started female hormones even earlier at 12, apparently one of the youngest globally to start a hormonal transition.
And once that decision is made to move forward with hormones, what are the effects?
Well, when a child starts cross-sex hormones, they basically begin going through the puberty associated with their affirmed gender.
Okay.
So for someone assigned female at birth taking testosterone, like Chris in the source material, that means their voice deepens, they grow facial and body hair.
And the reverse for someone assigned male.
Right. Taking estrogen, like Kim. Their testicles would shrink, they'd develop breasts. Chris, at 16, is quoted expressing satisfaction, liking his deeper voice, chest hair, saying, this is who I am, who I'm supposed to be.
But this decision, starting hormones, it comes with really significant implications, doesn't it? Especially fertility. Our sources touched on that.
Yes, definitely. And this raises that critical question about long-term consequences. What are they, especially around fertility?
Yeah.
For Bailey, who was considering testosterone, Dr. Norman Spack, a leading expert mentioned in the sources, explained a major side effect would be stopping her from growing any taller.
Right.
But, crucially, Dr. Spack also noted that for an individual assigned female at birth, taking testosterone would almost certainly make them infertile. And, at least currently, there's no established way to store eggs for future use in these specific cases.
Wow, that's huge. How did the family react?
Bailey's mother acknowledged it as a little heartbreaking,
Hmm.
but she also noted that Bailey still wants to be a parent someday, maybe biologically, maybe through adoption, or as a step-parent. It's just a profound decision to weigh at that age.
Absolutely. And shifting slightly, what about the personal impact from the perspective of young people who have transitioned? The emotional side seems really complex.
Oh, definitely. That Reddit thread you mentioned from RFTM Men, it offers a really powerful glimpse into this.
What did people share?
Many individuals said that transitioning as minors genuinely saved my life. That phrase came up. They talk about immense relief. Being able to begin adulthood as male and focus on other things, avoiding what they describe as debilitating dysphoria.
Integrating more easily.
Yes, and the original poster on that thread even said they realized they were wrong on every level about their previous doubts concerning minors transitioning.
Mm.
But you also hear about this regretful longing or silver medal syndrome from those who transitioned later,
What do they mean by that?
feeling like they missed out on a normal life or boy teenhood because they couldn't access care earlier. One person who started T at 15 said, "My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner."
So it paints this picture of relief and affirmation for many who transition early, but also potential regret for those who felt they started too late.
Exactly. A really vivid picture of both sides of that timing issue.
Okay, so beyond the medical side, the sources also really emphasize the importance of social and family support. It seems absolutely critical for transgender youth.
Oh, unequivocally. The Human Rights Campaign states it very clearly. Gender-affirming behavior on the part of parents and other adults greatly improves mental health and well-being.
And the opposite is true too.
Yes. Conversely, they say transgender children are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and they're at greater risk of substance abuse, even homelessness, when their immediate caregivers are rejecting or hostile.
That's stark.
For some, it's literally the difference between life and death, especially given the higher suicide risk among transgender youth facing rejection. The data on this is pretty compelling.
And we saw this reflected so vividly in those personal stories earlier. Josie's parents.
Right, they concluded that denying her identity would have meant they'd lost her by now, feeling they'd actually abused her by forcing her to be a boy.
And Kyler's parents saying they just could not carry on pretending like this was a boy and that non-acceptance causes so much damage. These aren't just abstract points, they're real families grappling with huge stakes.
Absolutely. And this inevitably leads us to a major tension that runs through your sources. Where exactly do we draw the line between parental rights, evolving medical best practices, and government intervention in these doubly personal healthcare decisions for minors?
Yeah, that's a huge point of conflict right now.
It's a really complex intersection. Individual autonomy, family roles, societal oversight.
And politically, we see this playing out very publicly. Nancy Pelosi, for instance, stating she's working for gender-affirming care for our trans kids at the national level.
Representing one side of the political spectrum.
But that stance is set against some really significant opposition, as reported in other sources.
That's right. Fox News reported on a multi-state lawsuit. I think it was 16 Democratic-led states, plus D.C. challenging executive orders from the Trump administration.
What were those orders trying to do?
Seeking to restrict federal grants and funding to institutions that provide transgender healthcare to young people. The administration defined anyone under 19 as a child in this context and labeled recognized medical treatments as, well, the term used was chemical and surgical mutilation.
Strong language.
Very. And the Department of Justice even issued subpoenas to healthcare providers, framing it as criminal law enforcement. So really intensifying the conflict.
So what are the arguments from the states filing the lawsuit, those opposing these federal actions?
Their core argument is that these orders are illegal and dangerous and, crucially, have no medical or scientific basis. That's a quote from Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel.
Based on medical consensus.
Exactly. Dr. Patricia Wells, medical director, emphasized the medical necessity of these treatments. She warned that the federal policies actually endanger children by forcing unwanted pubertal changes, which will cause worsening dysphoria.
And the parental rights angle.
Yes. A Michigan parent, Tess Miller, highlighted how this federal action threatens parental rights to make healthcare decisions for their own children. The lawsuit basically argues that medical experts and major national medical associations widely agree this care is necessary, even life-saving, preventing severe mental health outcomes. It's an argument grounded in medical consensus and individual liberty.
Okay. But even with strong support systems, even with access to medical interventions, the sources make it clear that transgender youth still face enormous challenges.
Oh, absolutely. It's not an easy path,
Ah,
even under the best circumstances.
Bailey, for example, experienced severe bullying, including, this is awful, having his pants pulled down at school to reveal he didn't have male anatomy.
It's horrific.
It led his family to move just to find a place where no one knew his biological sex. And both Bailey and Chris, they face this ongoing challenge of dating. When and how do you disclose your transgender identity to a potential partner, knowing it might have to be a secret at first?
These are daily hurdles, social and emotional burdens that most people just don't even have to think about.
And for those who transition later in life, as we touched on with that Reddit thread, the emotional toll of what might have been can be really immense.
Yeah, that thread clearly showed that jealousy or envy, people lamenting they could have had a normal life, feeling they missed out on an early transition.
Hmm.
They described the pain of seeing others have what feels too late for them, even if they can still transition later. It just reinforces how deeply personal this journey is and how the timing of affirmation can have these profound, lasting effects on someone's life story.
It really seems like this field is still evolving rapidly. Lots of critical questions still seem unanswered, especially about the long-term picture.
Yeah, stepping back to look at the larger implications, it's clear that while there's definitely been progress in understanding and supporting transgender youth, there are still significant unknowns.
Like the desistance debate showed.
Exactly. And the Transgender Trend Source, for example, repeatedly calls for long-term outcome studies. They emphasize that current therapeutic approaches often lack this robust long-term evidence base.
Some more research needed.
Absolutely. There's a vital need for more research to really understand the long-term psychological and physical impacts of the various approaches and, to refine best practices as we move forward.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you, our listener, trying to stay informed about transgender children and youth? It's complex.
It really is. I think one striking aspect of this deep dive is just the sheer breadth of perspectives you've heard about today. You've got these deeply personal stories, knowing oneself young, the vital role of family support,
Right.
then the medical side blockers, hormones, the questions around them, the ongoing scientific debate about desistance rates, and all of this set against this backdrop of really intense political and legal battles.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And ultimately, what this deep dive maybe reveals is this landscape where you have profound personal certainty from individuals about who they are, meeting significant scientific uncertainty about long-term outcomes, all happening within this fiercely contested political arena. The core insight might just be that tension itself. It highlights that there really aren't simple answers here, just complex human experiences navigating a constantly evolving understanding of identity and care.
Yeah, that tension is palpable. So given these passionate personal experiences we've heard, alongside the ongoing scientific and medical questions and these intense political and legal fights over gender-affirming care for youth, maybe the question for you to consider is, what responsibility do we as individuals and as a society have? How do we ensure both careful, critical consideration and compassionate support for transgender youth, especially when so much is still unknown and, frankly, so heavily debated?
That's a powerful question to leave with.
Definitely something to continue to mull over and explore as this field keeps developing.